to resume our meeting, and we're going to hear the report, the update from the Executive Director, Mr. Brian Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few quick updates. First, I wanted to thank everyone who's coming out today on this Saturday morning for our commission meeting. And I want to give a special shout out and thanks to our staff who worked so diligently to put everything together. And I'm thankful and grateful and humbled by their presence here this morning, as well as the commission itself. So let's give a little shout out. I do want to point out just a couple quick things. One, we do have a town hall meeting on March 12th in Palmdale, California. That information will be projected on the screen in a few minutes. Oh, okay, there it is. You see the information back there. So we moved this train around town to make sure that we get community input from throughout the community. And so we'll be up in Palmdale on the 12th. For those of you who can make it, we'd love to have you out. We're going to do a special push to get some folks out from Palmdale in that area to come to our meetings as well. This past year, we've done a real solid evaluation of our staff, and our staff worked so hard. We have made a budget request for some additional staff persons in the upcoming budget. So you may hear about that in the upcoming budget meetings, and we would definitely like the support of the commission and members of the public who might want to opine on that as it goes before the Board of Supervisors. But I think there's some additional help that's needed for our staff, and we're hoping to get those positions. And the final thing, I just wanted to give a shout out to the Sheriff's Department for putting on their website the policy prohibiting deputies from being involved in cliques or deputy gangs. There's a policy that's there. We'd like to see that policy fully enforced, but I did want to publicly acknowledge the fact that they placed that on the website, that they've updated that particular policy. So I want to thank the sheriff for that, and that concludes my report.
Yeah, as chair, I want to echo that. We're very glad to see that publicly stated and on the website, and it'll be on the new website, the newly revised website too. So kudos for that. Let's now ask Mr. Hudson, our Inspector General, to report on some recent activities that they are up to.
I have nothing really to add unless somebody has questions. I mean, I think we've already addressed the subpoena power issue that's pending, and that we'll go forward with that. We've had interaction with the Sheriff's Department about making sure that our ordinance, when it goes live, is honored, and so we've in discussions about that. We'll see what happens. You all know the history behind that. We have a quarterly report that just came out about quarterly activities, which includes an update on immigration, and I addressed the justice deputies of the board on Wednesday. So the short version of that is there was a concern about certain people who were being unlawfully transferred under, although they had had reductions under Prop 47, and we raised that at a previous board meeting, and the Sheriff's Department has modified their policy in a way that, practice in a way that I think will hopefully take care of most of that problem. We'll monitor it, so that was good news, and they talked about that at the CAR meeting. And we have a report coming out on the continued inactivation problem. It's really more of a just an ongoing report with summaries of inactivations and when they follow policy and when they don't. As you know, we've talked previously about that problem and the reduction in opening of cases. That's still a strong concern and was a concern of this body. And I will, since there was a question in public comment about the security holds, because this body had brought this up already with the coroner, you haven't ever gotten a report back on that. I realize your agendas are full and it may not be something you want to put on an agenda. You might want to have staff follow up on it. But it does relate to that 832.7 issue I was raising, of the fact that under the law there are now some very strict rules about the release of documents, including coroner's reports regarding shootings. And the concept of a security hold in which the Sheriff's Department tells the coroner not to release something under the law is not in the law. The law says that the agency that has the documents has to release them unless to do so would interfere with an investigation. So it's certainly appropriate for the Sheriff's Department to inform the coroner that the release of a document would interfere with an investigation, but the law requires an explanation now and requires a sliding scale over time to a very strong explanation. And 18 months out, everything's supposed to go out absent clear and convincing evidence that it would interfere with the criminal prosecution, which is almost never going to be a standard that's met, I don't think. So that issue that you already raised with the coroner's office, I think, has become much more significant in this context now that we're seeing a website with placeholders for this information. Hopefully, the folks in the Sheriff's Information Bureau or AAB, where there's a fairly large number of people, will be tasked with putting that information out. And I hope that that also then goes out to the coroner's office and a process is developed so that they can intelligently withhold information when they must, but in other instances put it out. And I know that's something the coroner's office has expressed interest in doing a better job on. So I think it's, and county council, of course, will be consulted in how, how to do that lawfully. But so I just want to let you know that there's some movement out there. It's not as quick as we'd all like, but a lot of the things that you are doing are getting a little bit of play in areas that I think eventually are going to lead to some good changes. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams, let's make a note to really check back with the coroner and really get more information on the security codes. And it came up today again. Commissioner?
Yeah, I just want to weigh in on that also. Can we, is there a way you can be tracking the number of cases that have security holds so you know and can track the dates? So
Can you speak
this
up?
doesn't
We
just
can't hear you back here.
Okay.
Is there a way that you can keep track of the number of security holds, what cases they have been placed on, and then we can keep track date by date that, okay, this has hit the criteria where you need to report why you're
I would
holding?
prefer not to, because currently the number of times in which the Sheriff's Department or Coroner's Office has complied with 832.7 is 0. So I don't think it's helpful to track the number of cases in which they haven't complied. And if we get to a point where they start to comply with some cases, then I think it would be appropriate to track percentage of compliance. But currently the percentage is 0.
Well, are we going to start at some point? And so, for instance, as of January 1, 2020, say, okay, now the clock's ticking, and we'd like to know how many security holds have been placed since January 1, 2020. And as the clock ticks, we look at those, they're at the appropriate benchmarks and say, okay, at this point, these documents should have been released. Were they? If not, why not?
In all the prior shootings where 18 months have gone by, or even all the prior shootings where 60 days have gone by, the law has not been complied with, therefore they should be released. So the triggering event you're describing has already happened. As a matter of course, in shootings, security holds are placed in most of them. And so those things are happening, and if this body wants me to, I can go find a number for you, but the bottom line is it's just not, as you've heard from the Sheriff's Department, they created a framework in which to report the information they're required to report by law, but they haven't actually filled it yet. I'm hopeful that the creating of the framework will then cause them to feel that they have to fill it, but it hasn't happened.
Okay, and I know we continuously
Refer to shootings, but we're not just talking about shootings, we're talking about fatalities at the hands of law enforcement, i.e. if someone dies in custody, the same rules apply, because we know in those cases, and we have one in particular, about Mr. Horton, where for 10 years they've had a security hold on that case. It kind of begs the question, what do you need, why do you have a security hold on something for 10 years when it doesn't appear to be a prosecution? I don't know the facts of the case,
But you should, because that's the purpose of that law. The law says that the government can no longer withhold that information without answering exactly your question, and not just the purpose of the hold, but really that it is absolutely necessary to keep these secrets from you. And that applies to the 10-year-old cases and applies to the ones you mentioned that are now starting to happen as the year goes through, and it is broader than just shootings, you're correct. But again, we have 0 compliance with that law. So it's really a matter for county council to advise the sheriff and the coroner on, and then to come up with a plan for compliance with the law, which is why I think you heard from the gentleman who was speaking, the desire for a budget item for more bodies. I'm of the opinion that with 25 bodies in SIB and a larger number in AAB that they have converted to this process, that we have a lot of bodies and we've gotten 0 output from what the law requires. So I don't believe this is a budgetary issue. However, at some point, if we move into gear and start actually complying with the law, it will be a budgetary issue. So I hope that will happen, and I think it will in time. I think, as you heard, it was a very genuine presentation about what they're wanting to do and planning to do, and I think it will happen, but we will have to see.
If not, use your subpoena power.
And we will have a subpoena, as pointed out, we will have subpoena available to us to address this issue. But there's already an ACLU lawsuit on the table about compliance. Therefore, there is a court somewhere that may make some rulings on this issue. So it might be something that might resolve itself without this body having to step in if it wants.
Well, we'll look into it though, but Mr. Williams is gonna make a note and we'll do some follow-up on security health. So thank you. Next on the agenda is a report from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and I don't see Assistant Sheriff Gross in the room. Is there anyone else who's representing the Sheriff's Department today? Okay, all right, we'll skip to the next one. And we'll go to our ad hoc committee updates. I'm sorry? So we're going to hear from Commissioner Bonner on the activities of the body worn camera ad hoc committee.
Thank you, Chair Giggins. By the way, let me just digress for 1 second and say that I also want to commend the sheriff on implementing a policy that prohibits heavy cliques or subgroups. He is to be commended on that, taking that step. We asked him to put his statements into policy, and he's done so. So I commend that. I commend the sheriff for that. All right. So let me at the last meeting in January, Madam Chair, you asked the ad hoc committee on body-worn cameras to review the policies that are being proposed by the Sheriff's Department surrounding the body-worn cameras when they're implemented, and hopefully they will be implemented soon. They haven't been. The ad hoc committee, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Harris, and I have reviewed those policies. We've compared them with the help, by the way, very excellent and able assistance of the COC staff, particularly Christine. We've been able to do a side-by-side comparison of those proposed policies with the policies that were recommended by the ad hoc committee to the COC back in July of 2018. And the COC adopted the recommendations of the ad hoc committee. I will just say now that most of the Sheriff's Department policies are consistent with the 14 recommendations that the ad hoc committee and the Oversight Commission adopted as recommendations to the Sheriff's Department. There are a few policies that are problematic or don't take full advantage of the Sheriff's Department's proposed policies that are problematic, or don't take full advantage of the benefits of body-worn cameras, both to the public and to the Sheriff's Department. So the long and short of it is, we had hoped to have something to you today. We don't, but I am optimistic that we've had 2 meetings already of the ad hoc committee on body-worn cameras. And I'm optimistic that within the next week or 2, we'll have a report with respect to the few areas that we think warrant recommendations for further considerations by the Sheriff's Department with respect to body-worn cameras and policy surrounding them. I think we're all in agreement, certainly the ad hoc committee was, that whatever we do here, it's important not to make the perfect the enemy of the good, and that is that whatever we're doing here, that we not slow down the implementation of body-worn cameras at the earliest possible time by the Sheriff's Department. So that's a very brief update, status report on where we're at.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to hearing more, and possibly will be an agenda item for the March meeting then. Okay, so now we have an opportunity. Are there any other questions? Sorry. Committee work.
Not on the body worn cameras, although I applaud the work that they're doing. As to the ad hoc committee on the deputy police, you've heard and others on the commission have applauded the sheriff's department for putting their policy on their website. As with anything, the proof will be what they end up doing with it. And I'm hopeful that with the oversight of this commission, that they will follow through with what their policy purports to say. I did want to note that yesterday, in various media sources had indicated that the district attorney's office determined that, according to their report, that there was insufficient evidence to file criminal charges against, I believe, 4 suspects in the Banditos altercation from a year ago. And I think now the next step is to see what the sheriff's department does in terms of its internal investigation of that event, and whether it makes a determination to hold any of those allegedly involved responsible. For those of you who don't know, law enforcement generally does not do an internal review until criminal charges are investigated and determined whether or not there's a filing. And unfortunately, oftentimes that criminal determination takes a long, long time. At least we now know what the district attorney's office has determined that they are not going to do. So the ball is now in the sheriff's corner to do a full and complete investigation on its own. And I hope that they have already begun the process. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and that'll be another note for us to follow up.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Any other comments, reports, questions, commentary? Okay, let's move to public comment. And now we're open to comment on any topics, some of which we've discussed today, or other topics that you think are of interest to the work that we do.
Raul Rodriguez, followed by Nadia Ramirez.
Good morning again. I think it's important that the job you're doing is very important, because you need to do your job of making sure that the sheriff does his job of representing the community, and the fact that now you can use the subpoena power to get information. So you need to hold his feet to the fire. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The following speakers signed up for item 3 and 4.
Okay, well, we could have that all together.
Nadia Ramirez.
Hi, good morning. It's my first time at Farm. I don't want to get emotional, but I'm here to speak on behalf of my cousin who was killed 5 months ago by the cops. And I commend you for putting body cams on those police officers, because when he was killed, the stuff that was said on his killing were not true. And we want you guys to be able to help the community with the killing, because Christian Ramos is not the only killing that has happened in this community. It has been more than once. We continuously, as a community, continue to get harassed by the police department, and we feel like nothing is being done. And Mr. Robert, I wanted to ask you, what would you be doing to help with those body cams? How soon will you get those body cams on those police officers? And how will those videos be uploaded? Will they be altercated? Will they be revised? Will they be not allowed to be revised? Will the truth come out if someone is to be killed, like Christian Ramos was? That is my question to you.
We'll make sure we're looking at those questions as part of the sheriff's policy, but it's the sheriff actually that makes the ultimate decisions on what policies will surround body worn cameras. We can only recommend what he should do, and that's what we'll be doing. Perhaps that'll be on for the next next meeting, I'm not sure.
Will they have to, my other question for you is, will these officers have to have these cameras on at all times, regardless of the situation that's going on?
You know, that's a good question. There is a policy on it. I would commend that you take a look at the sheriff's proposed policies on this, and then you can see, I'm sure we'll have a discussion of what the Oversight Commission thinks they should be at our next meeting. I'm pretty sure that'll happen. It's up to the chair as to whether that's on the agenda or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I really set a very bad precedent there by answering questions, I know. Sorry.
This will definitely be on our agenda in March.
Ron Dow, followed by Greg Allen, followed by Raul Rodriguez Jr.
Again, Commission has already reminded you, what gets measured gets done. But in April 2000, the competent leadership in the city of Compton disbanded the Compton PD and replaced it with the LA County Sheriff without referendum. Since then, through 2018, there, under the Sheriff's watch, there have been 827 murders, including 126 in surrounding unincorporated areas. Over the past 10 years, from 2009 to 2018, there have been 329 murders, including 54 from unincorporated areas, 40% Latinx, 59% black, and 2% white. 28 suspects, or 8%, have been arrested over that time period. And since the sheriff is unable to take killers off the street and the city has no plan other than to continue to deploy the sheriff, we propose a solution similar to the one leading to the arrest of the murderer of Victor McElhaney. That was in the LA Times article of the USC student that was arrested, that was killed, and the suspect subsequently arrested. We propose a reward of $75,000 be set for the 301 murders for which an arrest has not been made over the past 10 years. That cost of about $22 million might be possibly offset from the LASD budget, and to some extent maybe even the city of Compton. It's a small price for justice. If we can afford to give rewards for the death or the demise of burros in the Mojave Desert, certainly we can share some consideration for the human deaths and the murders that have gone unsolved to this day. Thank you.
Greg Allen, followed by Raul Rodriguez Jr., followed by Jacqueline Ventures.
Good morning. Everybody should be concerned about keeping Americans safe. Alex Villanueva rehired 27 people that we had let go. So in other words, management decided 27 people should have been dismissed. Now he's rehired them. LA Board of Supervisors cut off the pay to Officer Montoya. And I applaud that move. But what about the other 26? Let's cut off their pay as well. Let's get back to the Board of Supervisors and ask them to implement with HR to cut off this funds. These are our taxpayers' funds. I respect the management that let these 27 people go. I respect their decision. To bring them back on, I don't get that. I don't get it. Who's wrong? Were those people, if the management that's let them go, I want them disciplined if they did something wrong. But I believe and I support their decision to let them go. The rehire is outrageous behavior by our Alex Villanueva, the sheriff. I want that outrageous behavior fixed by showing him that we, the people, hold the purse strings of the people that he wants to rehire. Cut these people off financially. They're not going to show up at work anymore. Now that's what Oversight's all about. We don't need people who've been fired in dealing with our public. I'd be afraid to deal with any of these people that were fired. And you should be too. So let's protect the community from these fired, rehired sheriffs. Thank you.
Raul Rodriguez Jr., followed by Jacqueline Venters, followed by Julie Diaz Martinez.
Okay, I would like to start by saying that we have a constitution and we have a First Amendment right. And I'm appalled that this commission, and we have lawyers and we have judges in this commission, have taken my First Amendment right away. I saw that sign out there, and in September, we did the same thing. I used to bring my signs in 20 by 30, and for some reason, you decided that I couldn't do that any longer. So the point I'm making is that I have filed a complaint through the County Board of Supervisors, who appointed each of you to this commission. And I gave a letter to Patty Diggins, and I'm asking her to resign because she's not doing a very good job of representing the community. And also, you discriminate against me and other people who come to these meetings. So I'm asking you to resign, or they will probably ask you to resign. So you got a copy of the letter. And another thing I'm complaining about is the fact that we used to get 3 minutes to speak. Now you got it down to 2 minutes. What's next? 1 minute? That's another right we have. This commission shouldn't be doing that. We have rights. You're taking our rights away and you're giving them to other people like illegals. That's terrible. So please, change the way you do things to the people that speak here. We should be having 3 minutes to speak instead of 2. And I should be able to bring my 20 by 30 signs in here so I can voice my opinion. My opinion, it's either a verbal opinion or a sign like this. That's my First Amendment right. And I'm sure you agree. So please, change it.
Jacqueline Venters, followed by Leah Garcia, followed by Julie Diaz Martinez.
Okay, I just wanted you guys to know that I'm not biased against the sheriff department or any other law enforcement. I have law enforcement in my family. I have sergeants, lieutenants, and my pastor is a deputy sheriff. And they're guiding me on this journey, and this is why I'm still here, standing here, fighting after 9 years, because, the push, they know what happened that day. The gangs, our deputy gangs is real. My son went through a whole lot. He was mental, and all his mental rights were denied. He was forced to take a deal after the abuse that he received in the county jail, even the threat on his life. And after I was told that, I encouraged him to take the deal so we could remove him from the county jail. He didn't receive a visit for over a year, and that was after he got to Sacramento. And the sergeant was so nice to come out and asked me, what was going on. He went back there and he looked in his file. He said, "Ma'am, he had business like everybody else. I don't know who put this in his folder." So for a whole year, we wasn't able to see him, and that wasn't right either. This retaliation followed him through every facility that he went in because of this wrongful allegation that this Deputy Gonzalo Souza made against him. And I'm looking at the news and stuff that, some of these inmates commit suicide, which is really sad because of some of the trumped up charges that these deputies put on our loved ones. While they're sitting in jail, fighting for their life, they're mentally, physically, and sexually abused. We had a young man that came home from prison from being in there 3 years and had never even been charged, and he killed himself because of the abuse that he received behind the walls. February, a part of the retaliation, my son was denied medical treatment. September, the same deputy, the doctor came back and apologized to him and told him that he was wrong. He should have never did that. They allowed my son to suffer all this time. And
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but our time is up.
It's okay.
Thank
It's
you
okay.
so much.
I'm gonna be back.
Okay, you come back, please. You're welcome. Thank you.
Leah Garcia.
I'm Leah Garcia, Paul Reyes' mom. I was murdered June 27, 2019. I would like to report another incident of harassment by the East LA Sheriff's Department. I moved from the area around 3 weeks ago, And last week I got a call from one of the neighbors where Paul's Memorial at, stating that the East sheriff's, one sheriff went to her door knocking and asking her questions about me and my family. The last question that they did ask was, does she know where we live now? That really got me scared, because if it was business of the sheriff's department, they know my contact info and they have my number as well. For them to go and ask a neighbor, I got really afraid. I find it intimidating. They're trying to intimidate me and that neighbor. She got really scared. She has nothing to do with me and my family. She's been a nervous wreck since then, because she said they were really kind of demanding about it. And she kept on saying, no, I do not know where they live now. This is the kind of harassment me and my family do get on a daily, not maybe just, asking about us, but the looks, when they look at us, I mean, the looks would kill. I do not feel safe, and I don't know where to turn to. If I go into the sheriff's department to write a complaint, I have before. I talked to the captain, Mejia, and it's just lies I get. Lies that they're not mad at me, he says. They're not mad at me. Why should they be mad at me in the first place? Is because he said that all that I have said in the media, they're not mad at me. I don't know where to turn next.
Thank you.
And if I could address the, I'm not looking on, oh, here we go. I just want to address the status of harassment-based investigation, because the Sheriff's Department is not here today, but I did receive an email from them yesterday that they had anticipated having that concluded, but I think related to this issue, they were investigating it or looking into it, and so they're holding off on that. I received a letter from the sheriff asking for OIG cooperation in that. We sent back a letter saying, absolutely, have any of your assigned investigators contact my head of my audits and investigations. We'd be happy to help them with outreach so that we can speak to people in a way that doesn't intimidate them and make sure that the Sheriff's Department isn't sending the wrong message if that's not their plan. But we haven't gotten any response on that regard. But I do know that I think they're aware of this issue and that they are anticipating responding. I can't say anything about the nature of the investigation or how it's going, but so that issue is on the table, and hopefully soon we'll hear something from them.
Justice McCall.
Please imagine a government entity that is emboldened enough to act with impunity. Please imagine a public entity that acts with malice towards the public. Imagine a law enforcement agency operating as a gang while wearing a badge. Imagine a police force that uses this badge as a free pass to commit lawlessness. Imagine a sheriff department that shoots to kill our kids in the back. In any other country, we would examine these issues and we would label this entity as a paramilitary syndicate. In any other city in the United States, we would call this sheriff department a criminal syndicate. In any other small town across America, we would fear such an entity. And we do fear the LA County Sheriff Department and our community. We appeal to you to end the LA County Sheriff Department's destruction of our communities. Since Jackie Lacey has been in office, over 500 officer-involved shootings have been attributed to law enforcement, and yet Lacey has only investigated and charged and held one individual sheriff accountable for a death. We as a community look to you for both leadership, and most importantly, we look to you for protection. And really quickly, I have just a minute to talk. You mentioned that you complimented the sheriff on producing that document saying that he does not endorse that within his department. You need to look a little further. He's calling them cliques. He's treating them like a frat boy, hazing at activity. In addition to that, he has a policy, and it's a stated policy in writing I can share with you, in which he claims that the sheriff department does not track any gang activity or clique members.
Thank you.
Luis Silva, followed by Johnny Torres, followed by Joshua Wafer.
I'd just like to say that there's been a big difference with Alex Villanueva being sheriff. What I've seen in the past with Baca, we know where his new residence is nowadays, and McDonald. I've tried to talk to him about the problems at East LA. I've gotten to know a lot of the deputies, and there's been some bad ones too, and I can say they're not there anymore. My opinion is he's done things to change things around. He's gotten rid of people. On the very first day, he got rid of people. And I just think that the department is going in the right way, the right direction. You can't take 12 years and try to change it over in 2 years, 3 years. Sometimes it takes longer, you know. And I just want to let you know that I've seen a lot of good things come out of East LA Station. My business was in East LA for 62 years. My business still is in the LA County area, and I support the Sheriff's Station, East LA. I support Alex Villanueva on what he's doing, and I feel you guys should back him up as well.
Johnny Torres, followed by Joshua Wafer, followed by Dr. Ellen Zuckerman.
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know, I have enough time in 2 minutes, but I just wanted to share that, you know, before I came working gang intervention to East LA and being funded by Hilda Solis' office and being supported by Hilda Solis, over a decade I worked in the city of LA, Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, El Sereno, particularly with the GRID program, which is Gang Reduction Youth Development. There was a strong relationship between intervention and LAPD, and unfortunately that is not occurring in East Los Angeles with the Sheriff's Department or even the City of Industry. We cover all of District 1 with a focus in East LA, and Hilda Solis, she can only force the relationship to a certain degree, but not like in the city with the mayor. So maybe hopefully you guys could help with that, because one of the main reasons that we want a relationship is because not just have that good line of communication with each other so we know what's going on both ends and what we offer, especially as intervention, but one of the big pieces is crisis response. And we service the family with counseling, victims of crime advocacy, making sure that they're taken care of, additional support. And just from March of 2019 and to now, we responded to 30 crises within District 1, 14 in East Los Angeles, 16 in the city of La Puente, and that is absolutely with no relationship with the sheriffs at all. So I wonder how many families are slipping through the cracks that hopefully wish to service and help with their trauma and their time of hardship. Because in LAPD, we would get a notification whenever a crisis occurred. But in East Los Angeles or in District 1, that does not exist. And even with that in consideration, we still responded to 30 crises within District 1 within the 10-month span that I just mentioned. And out of those crises, 3 were officer-involved shootings that occurred in East Los Angeles and 1 in Montebello. Thankfully, nobody was fatally hurt in Montebello. And I'll close it with this. Even though the officer that just spoke before me said that Alex is doing a great job, he's still rocking the Ford Apache. Like I told you guys, I'm Apache, and to an Apache man celebrating a Holocaust, that is very offensive. Mitashi, chinimbe. Gracias.
Thank you. Would you, one second, would you mind, hello? Hi. Just, would you mind leaving your card in here so maybe we can facilitate that intersection with the shop? Thank you so much.
Joshua Wafer, followed by Dr. Ellen Zuckerman, followed by Kane Arteaga.
Hi, my name is Joshua Wafer. I came here today just to say, you know, I don't know everything, but, you know, I believe in accountability, just like I think everyone in this room does. I believe the sheriff should be held accountable. I believe county supervisors who appointed you all should be held accountable, just like you all should be held accountable, and myself. And I agree to disagree. It doesn't mean that I disagree with everything that a person is saying. Just in part, I may disagree. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people in this room that disagree with the sheriff or agree with the sheriff. But there was an election, a historic election, where there was an overwhelming amount of support, me included, that voted for the sheriff to do something in our community. And all those people aren't here today. So all I'm saying is that if you voted for someone, or if the people voted for someone, and the people said, yes, this is who we want to represent us in our community and do their job, then allow that person to do it. Period. Because I think if Sheriff McDonald was here, we wouldn't be having these conversations. So all I'm saying is that if you all are here appointed to be the voice of everyone in this room and everyone in our community and the county, we can have differences. Let's discuss those to find some common ground. Thank you.
Dr. Alan Zuckerman, followed by Kane Arteaga.
To start off where I left off before, please. Alan Phillip Villanueva inherited all of the department's problems and eradicated many of them by first removing all of the executive staff that McDonald kept in place. He also began a review of disciplinary cases of deputies who were wrongfully disciplined, demoted, or terminated during the McDonald era. He simply followed the mandate of the AirCom Commission. Under the new Sheriff Academy, classes are now at capacity, jail violence is down, proactive policing has returned, arrests are up, and crime is down. There is now ongoing training which didn't exist before, as well as a reduction in overtime pay, resulting in a reduction of the budget. It's quite an accomplishment in his brief tenure. Sheriff Villanueva takes deputies' due process just as seriously as the rights of the citizens he is sworn to protect. By investigating the cases of those rights that were violated and reinstating those wrongfully terminated, it is what our system of justice demands. Not affording law enforcement personnel or any employee protection of their due process results in precisely what occurred under Sheriff McDonald. Low morale and inability to recruit qualified candidates, resulting in low staffing, a rise in overtime pay, and ballooning budget. Sheriff Villanueva understands this. Sheriff Villanueva has not withheld data that is legally discoverable by the COC. The use of subpoena is unnecessary. I believe the use of subpoena will only elicit a contentious relationship as opposed to mutually supportive working one. His numerous accomplishments should be recognized and supported. The sheriff swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. You will find he takes that oath seriously, and I thank you for providing this forum to express my viewpoints. I'm not an employee of LASD nor a member of the volunteer of the Sheriff's Campaign Organization. In fact, I actually supported Bob Lindsay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm glad you came back to complete your statement.
Kane Arteaga.
Good morning. I'm here because my younger brother was killed at the Twin Towers facility in 2018, and the sheriffs covered it up. They lied about it. They didn't follow their own procedures for officer-related incidents. You guys talked about officer shootings today, but before, the policy was the same for any incident that involved law enforcement, whether it was a shooting or in custody deaths. It should be the same procedures. As of this morning, I looked at my brother's information. He's still on the website. I was concerned that that would be eliminated since they updated the system. And so here we are, 2 years later, he's still, according to the website, an inmate at Twin Towers with no release date. just crazy. Yeah. That needs to be addressed. Like I said, the sheriffs, the homicide department deputies, you would assume that they would be of the most highest caliber, the most highest integrity they would have. You know, you think they'd be true professionals, but they're not. Like I said, they're liars. I would like to see criminal charges brought against these people. Set the example. Them investigating their own, as was mentioned here earlier, is completely inappropriate. It's wrong. It's hypocritical. It makes no sense. Why not implement some kind of plan where there's some kind of like Mothers of America kind of group, maybe, yeah, something like that.
Thank you, your time is up. What's your brother's name?
Daniel Arteaga.
Ortiaga or Arteaga?
Arteaga.
Arteaga. Okay, thank you so much.
That's our final speaker.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're going to, any comments from anybody? Okay, so, thank you all for coming out on a Saturday. This is the first time we've been able to do this, and I appreciate that we've had some newcomers, some people coming for the first time. And I want to let you know that the next meeting will be March 19th, and we'll be back at our, we're calling it our main home, although it won't be, we do have 2 other Saturdays that we will be out in the community, but it's at St. Anne's Conference Center on Occidental in LA. So hope some of you will be able to join us next month, and safe travels and a good rest of weekend for everyone. Thank you.